Where's that baloney? Oh, there it is. Come on, don't tell me you've never done this. We know better.
You know, food in the 50s wasn't just different, it felt strange at times. I just didn't realize how strange until I started eating at other people's houses. I've got great memories about food growing up. Some of them still make me laugh. My good friend and neighbor Bob kind of suggested this topic for the video. He caught me the other day and said he had an idea for a video and started talking about the food from his childhood, and he mentioned one-eyed jacks and chipped beef on toast, which I'm both familiar with. The chipped beef from the Navy, of course, and the one-eyed jacks are the slice of bread with the egg cooked in the middle. I'm sure you've seen them if you haven't had them. I got to thinking about it, and I've got a lifetime of those kind of memories. I was kind of a picky eater growing up. There were a lot of things that I didn't care for. I didn't care for onions, and there were a lot of things that I didn't care for. My mother was pretty lenient. She really didn't make us eat anything we didn't really like. Usually we had to try it first, but she didn't force anything on us. And I grew up Catholic, and I was never that fond of fish, except for except for fish sticks. You remember those little processed fish stick looking things? I like those, but being Catholic, on Fridays we always were meatless, and she often fixed fish. And then, like I said, I didn't care for fish, so I ended up eating a lot of Franco-American spaghetti, the meatless variety. She didn't force food on us, but we did have to clean up our plate. And you sat there until it was clean. I was often the last one at the table. But the real eye opener for me, where food was concerned, is when I started eating at friends' houses or neighbors' houses. I remember there was a Maltese family that moved in next door to us, and they had a boy that was my age, and we became good friends. And he invited me over for dinner one day for spaghetti dinner. And great, let's have spaghetti dinner. So their idea of spaghetti was spaghetti noodles with butter and cheese. And I was familiar with spaghetti with meat and tomato sauce. So they put the plate in front of me with the butter and cheese, and I looked at it and thought to myself, this isn't spaghetti. I ate naturally, but it was different. It was not what I was accustomed to. And shortly after they moved in, they started having a produce truck show up at their house with fresh produce, and they would occasionally buy a live rabbit. That was foreign to me. We're talking about a neighborhood in the city, in Detroit, and here comes a produce truck selling live rabbits to the neighbors. I said, what are they going to do with a live rabbit? Well, you know what they were going to do with it. They didn't invite me over for rabbit dinner. Another time I was at another friend's house, and it was over lunchtime, and his mother was going to fix us lunch, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Who doesn't like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, right? Great. So she served the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and it was made with chunky peanut butter. And I had never had chunky peanut butter before. My mother always used creamy peanut butter. So I'm eating the sandwich saying, what are these chunks in here? It was very confusing to me. When you're that young, you just assume that the way things are at home are the way things are everywhere. And that just isn't true, as I found out at a young age. And growing up in the city had its own food experiences as opposed to growing up in the country. It was a post-war neighborhood that I lived in, where most of the houses were the same and they were real close together and like that. And we had ice cream trucks that would come around, a converted pickup truck with a box on the back that they'd put dry ice in and throw their different ice cream bars in there and drive up and down the neighborhoods with the ringing the bells, ching, 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 ching. Our favorite ice cream man was Irv. He came around regularly, and we got to where we could recognize his bells coming down the street. And we'd be charging into the house saying, get the money! Because we had to get our ice cream cones from Irv. And Irv had a program where he would, with each purchase, he'd give you a little card, like a business card type thing. And when you collected a certain number of these cards, you'd get a free ice cream. And I can still remember that just vividly, that packet of ice cream cards with a rubber band around it in the junk drawer in the kitchen. And we also had the good humor man come around occasionally. He wasn't quite as regular as Irv, but he'd show up every once in a while. And it was kind of to us, the good humor truck was kind of a specialty event. We didn't often buy from the Good Humor guy because we were Irv. First of all, because we were Irv fans, and second of all, because they were a little pricier. I remember the toasted almonds were, I think, 35 cents, and that they might even have been a little bit less than that. But the popsicles from Irv were a dime. So at the time, that made a difference. On a special occasion, we might get a Good Humor bar, a toasted almond or a strawberry shortcake, I remember. Sometimes we'd get a push up. Remember those ice creams? And we also had ice cream bicycles that would come around. Those would be mostly at at the ballparks or the parks and recreation events, things like that, where guys would pedal up on their ice cream bicycles and sell ice cream. Kind of worked the same way, had a dry ice box on the front of it. Then a little while later, a Mr. Softy truck started coming around. And I remember him mostly around the grade school. Not in our neighborhood so much, but mostly around the grade school where I went. But I was never a soft ice cream fan. I'm still not a soft ice cream fan. The harder the better when it comes to ice cream in my book. These are really great memories. It's really simple, everyday stuff, but it seems important now. And then there was candy. We had a store a couple blocks from our house up on the main street, Joy Road in Detroit. I think it might have been a Kowalski store. I really don't remember. It might have been a Kowalski store, which Kowalski was a local Detroit, not local, but a Detroit meat processor. And they had stores around the city, and they sold penny candy. And I mean penny candy. A variety of candies for a penny apiece. My favorite was Red Hot Dollars, which was a little cinnamon licorice looking disc. And those were two for a penny. So for a quarter, you could get a sack full of Red Hot Dollars. And of course, they sold pop at the Kowalski store too, or soda for some of you probably. To us, it was always pop. Soda pop. And I remember RC Cola and Double Cola being our favorites. I think they were the first ones that came out with the 16-ounce bottles in our area. So you got more, plus it was cheaper. How can you go wrong? Why wouldn't you buy those? And I had a friend growing up, had moved to our neighborhood from Tennessee. And Ronnie Phillips was his name, and we became good friends. And he brought some new things with him when he came from Tennessee that kids in the city didn't know about. I guess anybody coming from a different area is going to bring something new. But anyway, he brought some ideas some ideas to the neighborhood, and he would take a nail and poke a hole in the top of the pop bottle and through the cap, and then you drink the pop through through the hole in the cap. And it was just a different way of drinking it. You kind of had to suck the pop out of it. It was just different. But we'd do that from time to time. And he had a talent. He had lots of talents, believe me, some we can't talk about. But he had his talent of taking a bottle cap, and there was a way that he would hold it in his hand and snap his fingers like that and shoot it, and it would fly. I never got the knack of that. Anyway, and he's the one that taught me to whistle with two fingers. So nothing to do with food, but that was one of the talents Ron Phillips taught me. Anyway, back to bottle caps. Speaking of bottle caps, do you remember when the bottle caps had the little cork inside? The liner was cork, not plastic, the seal. And when you took the bottle cap off, you could carefully pry that little cork liner out of it and then make a badge out of it. Put the badge on the outside of your shirt and put the cork on the inside and press it back in, and you'd have a bottle cap badge. Remember doing that? I remember that. Some things from back in the day you just don't see anymore. Like potato chips in tin cans. They were delivered like milk to your house, directly to your house. Remember the little packets The desiccant in the potato chips looked like little packets of charcoal in there to keep the potato chips crisp. And my mother would buy ring bologna that came with a little toy in the center. And roast beef that was like a 2-inch steak. Cook it up like a roast and cut it in chunks. When was the last time you had a chunk of roast beef instead of a slice? And that was always cooked with potatoes and carrots. Always. And the chicken at our house was always deep fried. I remember going to Aunt Goldie's and she baked it with a Rice Krispie coating on it, and I was confused by that because I thought chicken was all deep fried. And we always had cold hot dogs and bologna in the refrigerator for snacking. Just go grab a cold hot dog, go grab a chunk of bologna, bite a mask out of it, and have that for a snack. And I could go on forever. Just one memory triggers another. You know how that is. Yeah, I was a picky eater back then, but I got kind of cured of that when I went into the service. I came out of the service eating everything. And back then it was just food. And now it's providing some really great memories. Now I know you've got food memories from your childhood. I wish you'd drop them down in the comments because I'd love to hear about them. So thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying your spring or your fall for our friends down under. Peace and joy, my friends, and eat hearty.